Marguerite was always present at every first night, and passed every evening either at the theatre or the ball. Whenever there was a new piece she was certain to be seen, and she invariably had 3 things with her on the ledge of her ground-floor box: her opera-glass, a bag of sweets, and a bouquet of camellias. For 25 days of the month, the camellias were white, and for 5 they were red. No one ever knew the reason of this change of colour, which I mention, though I cannot explain it. It was noticed both by her friends and by the habitués of the theatre, to which she most often went. She was never seen with any flowers but camellias. At the florist's, Madame Bargeon's, she had come to be called the Lady of the Camellias, and the name stuck to her. Like all those who moved in a certain set in Paris, I knew that Marguerite had lived with some of the most fashionable young men in society, that she spoke of it openly, and that they themselves boasted of it, so that all seemed equally pleased with one another. Nevertheless, for about 3 years after a visit to Bagnères, she was said to be living with an old duke, a foreigner, enormously rich, who had tried to remove her as far as possible from her former life, and, as it seemed, entirely to her own satisfaction. In the spring of 1842, Marguerite was so ill that the doctors ordered her to take the waters, and she went to Bagnères. Among the invalids was the daughter of this duke. She was not only suffering from the same complaint, but she was so like Marguerite in appearance that they might have been taken for sisters. The young duchess was in the last stage of consumption, and a few days after Marguerite's arrival, she died. One morning the duke, who had remained at Bagnères to be near the soil that had buried a part of his heart, caught sight of Marguerite at a turn of the road. He seemed to see the shadow of his child, and going up to her, he took her hands, embraced, and wept over her, and without even asking her who she was, begged her to let him love in her the living image of his dead child. Marguerite, alone in Bagnères with her maid, and not being in any fear of compromising herself, granted the duke's request. Some people who knew her, happening to be at Bagnères, took upon themselves to explain Mademoiselle Gautier's true position to the duke. It was a blow to the old man. But it was too late. She had become a necessity to his heart, his only excuse for living. He made no reproaches. He had indeed no right to do so, but he asked her if she felt herself capable of changing her mode of life, offering her in return for the sacrifice every compensation that she could desire. She consented. It must be said that Marguerite was just then very ill. The past seemed to her sensitive nature as if it were one of the main causes of her illness, and a sort of superstition led her to hope that God would restore to her both health and beauty in return for her repentance and conversion. By the end of the summer, the waters, sleep, the natural fatigue of long walks had indeed more or less restored her health. The Duke accompanied her to Paris, where he continued to see her, as he had done at Bagnères. Marguerite had returned more beautiful than she had ever been. She was about 20, and her malady, sleeping but not subdued, continued to give her those feverish desires which are almost always the result of diseases of the chest. It was a great grief to the Duke when his friends, always on the lookout for some scandal on the part of the woman with whom, it seemed to them, he was compromising himself, came to tell him, indeed to prove to him, that at times, when she was sure of not seeing him, she received other visits, and that these visits were often prolonged till the following day. On being questioned, Marguerite admitted everything to the Duke, and advised him to concern himself with her no longer, for she felt incapable of carrying out what she had undertaken, and she did not wish to go on accepting benefits from a man whom she was deceiving. The Duke did not return for a week.